Hey everyone, I hope you've had a great week and are ready for the latest from Unreal Engine. In April, more than 800 devs from all over gathered in Prague to celebrate their achievements, connect with like-minded pros, and learn new ways of using Unreal Engine to create great games at the second annual Unreal Fest Europe. We're pleased to announce that you can now view all available sessions from the event online. This includes talks on workflows, blueprints, automated testing, and more from Epic devs and our incredible partners. See all the talks in the link below. Building on the success of All-Star Fruit Racing, 3D Cloud set out to develop Xenon Racer, a game that pays homage to arcade classics like Daytona, Wipeout, and F-Zero. The roughly 20-person studio also wanted to inject Xenon Racer with modern visuals and physics. We sat down with a few members of their team, and they shared what it was like working with esteemed automotive designer Marcello Reilly, elaborated on what the futuristic setting allowed them to do, and shared Unreal development tips. Since the release of Epic Online Services, our suite of cross-platform game services, we have continued to develop its foundation. We're currently focused on the immediate needs of store partner products nearing launch. We're also working to open up the identity and social services built for Fortnite to support crossplay in partner games without requiring the use of Epic accounts or other Epic dependencies. Due to these prioritizations, several roadmap items are being delayed, including player reports and player data storage services. To provide more detail, we're moving the roadmap to a Trello board, which you can bookmark and revisit at your convenience. Developer Senzaru Games is no stranger to developing VR games. The company's latest effort, Asgard's Wrath, releases later this year. Produced in collaboration with Oculus, the fantastical action game boasts an epic 30-hour adventure with top-notch production values that has the potential to alter our perception of what's possible with a VR game. Read our full interview with Senzaru Games to learn how the studio is developing the game's satisfying swordplay and how they're delivering one of VR's best-looking games while keeping performance steady. Additionally, the duo elaborates on the benefits of using Unreal, provide their thoughts on the future of VR, and more. The highly anticipated Oculus Quest is finally here. The hype is driven by the fact that the VR headset is completely wireless, doesn't require a PC, and coupled with Oculus Insight, a new inside-out tracking system, the all-in-one headset doesn't require any external sensors or cameras. It's a completely tetherless experience. Unreal Engine fully supports the Oculus Quest, and to commemorate the launch, we encourage you to try out a few of the awesome UE4-powered titles that you can play today, such as BOGO, Creed Rise to Glory, Moss, Robo Recall Unplugged, and so many more. Giant Squid's The Pathless, which heads to the Epic Games Store and PS4 this year, builds upon the success of their first project, Abzu, while offering increased interaction, all new characters, and a completely new setting. When visiting the small studio, their commitment to creating atmospheric and immersive experiences was clear, also something they admit isn't easily achieved. Here the teams reflect on the foundation that's been laid for the company, the challenges associated with indie game development, and the importance of choosing the necessary tools required to achieve their goals. It's weekly Karma Time mini thanks to Shadow River, Everynone, Vertex Soup, Nebula Games Inc., Norlin, Karoo, Chakupinator, Unfathomable, Sith Hunter, and Christoph Morva. They've supported fellow devs on AnswerHub. Head there and answer questions, and you too could see your name up here. Up first for our spotlights today is Minimal Move, a new perspective puzzle game in 3D. Having landed on a mysterious planet as two space investigators, you must find out the secret of the planet. The game? Move blocks and go to a portal. Easy peasy, right? And here we have The 12, A Miserable Truth. It's a single-player RPG set in a medieval fantasy world created by a solo developer. As the revived protector and leader of the original 12 noble knights, you must face riddles, fights, and horrors to help restore order to the kingdom. Join their alpha today to offer up your feedback. And last but not least is Abstract. It's a third-person cooperative or PvP online action game set in an evolving sci-fi world. The game is full of rockets, lasers, and zombies, because why not? Experience an arena-type shooter with old-school elements. The dev also has plans for a horde mode and single-player. Thanks for tuning in to this week's News and Community Spotlight.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Unreal Engine live stream. I am your host, Victor Broden, and with me today I have Øystein Larsen, Chief Creative Officer over at the Future Group. And Øystein is here today to talk to us a little bit about what it's like and how to do augmented live virtual broadcasts. You have a lot of experience in this area, so I'm really happy that we were able to get you here and to sort of show us a little bit what it's like behind the scenes, because to a lot of us, this kind of content has, we've seen a little bit around it, and I know you're going to show us some of the productions you've done, but for the most part, it's kind of a black box for us, right? And it's not a lot of people around the world doing it. So with that in mind, would you please like to introduce yourself to our watchers and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, great to be here. My name is Øystein Larsen. I'm the Chief Creative Officer here at the Future Group. I have a background in visual effects. I've been in visual effects about 15 years before I got into real-time space. The Unreal Engine was a pretty natural choice. And I think, for me, seeing how the tools are kind of evolving, it was where innovation was going to be happening, in the next 10 to 15 years. And we're already seeing, fruits of it. I've been here for about 4 years now in the space. So it's pretty exciting, and we've gotten to do a lot of cool things in that time. So it's very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I think a lot more people have seen some of the fruits of your work, more so than knowing that it's actually powered by Unreal and your own tool, so to make the broadcast. And it's, I guess, within the development community, it's becoming a little bit known that we've done these stuff, sort of with the Weather Channel and similar, but it's still it's very new, right? We're starting to see it, but it's not common practice yet.
Sure, and I mean, when we first started, or when I joined the Future Group, we were creating this. It was a crazy concept. It was a massive TV show. We had crazy games going on in the studio, and it was supposed to be, we had Unreal Engine running in the studio with 10 cameras with these games that they can interact with, and later that was broadcast, with a lot of games on the mobile that can interact with the TV show. It was a big idea. And at that point we didn't even really have sequencer tools. I mean, obviously had Matinee and things like that, but there was a lot of things that in those years since then has really come about, to be, and it's really good. And that's why we kind of ended up utilizing all the things that are in the engine to create our tool that started out, with all these ideas and then came to fruition. And then it was this product called Frontier, and then that kind of sifted in, and we created a kind of a new taste on it, which is now Pixitope. So it's pretty exciting to see, and nice to be kind of piggybacking on the Unreal Engine, which is just such an amazing platform to have this on top of.
Yeah, that's great. You want to get started with with your reel and show everyone a little bit what
Sure,
you've done
yeah,
in the past?
that'd be great. Just run the reel, and then we can have a little bit of talk about that, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the live production part of it.
Sounds good.
Let's do it.
I'm grabbing my helmet and I'm taking shelter now.
I love the shot of the weatherman just running out of the studio, having the wall blow in on him. Was that the actual camera? Like they actually flipped the camera?
No, that's the virtual part. So we
Okay.
do a switch in there at some point, but the interesting thing is, you have what I think is really cool about the projects, and I like to keep these kind of like, reels really short and sweet, because it's just getting those shots in there that I think what we're feeding off of is these people out there that really want to go and do, play in the live space, which is really amazing because they want to start, pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and we're running all the stuff at 60 frames or 59, 94 frames a second, whatever. It's crazy how you want to, you really got to hold that stuff to get it all in there. And when you're in the live space with real cameras, you don't really have control over where they want to point it. So you got to make sure that, everything that you do is really well, planned out and done in the right way. So, losing a frame here, it will just, it will freeze your frame and 100, and now that we've been doing shows with, between 100 and 200 million people, it's not the best to be kind of, doing that. So that's why you need to, keep it under control. And I think it's, but it's, it's all credit to the people that really want to, start and push out there that want to do these things, because that's what innovation is all about, and kind of driving the world forward a little bit,
Yeah, definitely. And we get some really amazing footage, and we get to be a part of it as the viewers, right? And get to look into this crazy world. And I think it's hard for a lot of people to understand that most of these things are live, right? The augmented part of it, the virtual world that you're augmenting into real world, that's also being rendered in real time because of the fact that you can move the cameras, right? The live action cameras around. So it's not pre-rendered. And I guess that's where you are also sort of educating part of the industry now, and showing them that this is actually possible.
Yep. So that's we really want to get people to start playing in this world, and then we found that through our efforts that we now kind of have a good tool that you can start getting into this space. And it's still a really it's a huge effort to deal in this live space as well, right? Because there's so many, every time you show up a new place, there's going to be some new equipment. There's going to be someone has a camera, someone has this and that, and then you got to make sure that the creative part is one thing, but here at the Future Group, we pretty much have people that can take this from start to finish, through the creative phase, drive what needs to be done, and setting up all the, basically you would call it triggers, or ways that you would make sure that you could run all these things live when you're on location. And then, but aside from that, you also have the developers that are supporting these productions, and also the operations teams. So you can't really come with a laptop in your hand. You gotta. So that's why we tend to. I'll have a little picture. This is just a little. I don't know if you can share my desktop there, but it's just a little taste there of what we bring to the field here. Like we have our racks, and we need, they need to be connected and be ready to go, so we can set them all up really quickly and roll them in and be ready to go pretty quick. You can't be running around asking for Ethernet cables when you're on site. So having these people, that can do these operational things, it's really good to be able to do that. So kind of a team that can do more than one thing on big productions like that. So I think that's a big part of it as well. But for the actual graphics and doing the operations part, that's something that we're leveraging. You want to have really, really strong control of what you're doing, but it should be quick and easy to do when you're on site, right? You have to have a quick turnaround time, because when someone's how TV production is usually pretty fast paced, and you got to be able to turn around quick and get these things out the door. So so that's why we kind of laid our tools on top of where we have Unreal Engine underneath, and we can do all these amazing things and connect to any of the logic that we want to create up front, and then create interfaces to that are super quick to deal with when you're running in a live environment. So with that said, I think we can you can run the opener for Super Bowl. We were super happy to be invited to help out on this, and the fact that they really wanted to do this live is amazing, and I think it's such a cool thing. It's super bold, right? It's one, it's if not the biggest one in the year in the US. It is probably pretty close. And the whole system around it, it's amazing to see that we're allowed to come in and do this amazing amazing thing that they wanted to do. So let's just roll the opener, and we can have a chat about it.
And we are backstage with Tom.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that all that is live. And then the last capture there is done with a drone, right? It's actually someone controlling a drone shot for the big sort of.
No, so the last part is a Skycam.
Okay.
And the thing about the opener there is that it's fairly traditional in terms of visual effects. Call it a shot, whatever, or shots. So we aren't allowed to really do any manipulation of the environment or anything like that when we're running it, because we have 20 seconds, and but we are tied into running on specific time codes, so that we know that when this thing is rolling, there's pretty much it just takes off and does its thing. But the cool thing about it is that from a visual effects standpoint, you can create the assets. We do previs right in the engine. We can set up our cameras, get our ideas out, and then start to thinking about the actual real world application. So can we get these cameras to reach these places? So in the US, we had our Lawrence Jones and Nathaniel Horton, as well as Justin LeBroad. They were on site and helping out with these calculations and figuring out how we're going to move all these cameras and doing the creative part of that. And meanwhile, when I was over in Oslo with the creative team, and we were piecing all the stuff together, we had it was a fairly short amount of time up front before on the project itself, but we had really good help from our friends, Fred Ruff at the Refuge of VFX, and they helped us out with some creation of the assets and some animation stuff. And then we took it all in and built all these pieces together and made sure that the animations themselves were fairly technical, but the technical part of it as well was getting all the normals and stuff to look great when you had all this unfolding geometry and stuff like that. That was pieced together into Unreal, and then it was all look dev'd. And then once we were on site, we actually had a LiDAR scan of the stadium itself, so we could make sure that we got all the right measurements and the dome in the correct place. And then when you get on site, you start doing all the rehearsals, and we were planning all this out with NCAM guys on site with the SMT tracking systems and NCAM tracking systems. So we had a jib at the beginning where it was looking up, and then we kicked it over to the Skycam traveling over, and then when back on the ground to the Steadicam, the Skycam guys had to make sure that they got all the way in to do their next shot, and you only had a few seconds to ramp that thing up and get in there and then get the shots. And then it's a symphony of trying to get all the stuff together, but it's cool to see when it all comes together like that. So and at the same time making sure that it all clicks in at 60 frames per second and doesn't hitch, So it's it's all fun and games.
All fun and games, and I'm assuming that most of our viewers, there are game developers, right? Might be a couple of people tuning in specifically to the virtual production part, because it is growing, but we all know how tough it can be to hit that 60 frames a second consistently at all time, and then you layer all of these real world problems and hardware and everything else on top of that, and so it's very impressive. I don't know if all...
And it's stuff...
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's stuff like that you run into where it's stuff that you can't foresee, right? Things like, there's a noise. We had this issue where there was a noise signal that was interfering with the video signals coming in. So we had these things adapted onto there so that we could actually control that. And when you see stuff like that, you're just like, okay, you just got to deal with it, and it's production. So things move fast, and you just get it done.
A lot of duct tape, maybe?
Not usually. I mean, it's pretty tight. You know, we make sure that we, especially for live systems, you really don't want to make sure that that you have really good systems running and tight machinery. So, but we always have fail safes and stuff like that we can click over. We always have some backups and everything's running on UPSs and all this stuff. So it's an important part of it. So that's just the machinery, and then you're interfacing with all these different camera types and lenses, and that's the good thing for us is like we working with these tracking vendors. It's really good because we can work tightly with them. We have people here that really understand that space and can take lens calibration data and make sure that it feed it in, and that we can get work together with them to get it really well done. But without camera tracking, it's not much we can do, right, to integrate into the images. So it's really great to be working with these guys as well. It's super awesome.
And so maybe you were going to get into it, but I'm actually curious how do you do the tracking on the cameras?
So I mean, there's different systems, right? So so the ones that we one of the systems we use here, NCAM, is an optical system. So it basically creates a point cloud out of what it sees. Using infrared stereo vision, and then
so it's inside out then.
Yeah, so it basically uses these two stereo cameras, and it also has a boom that reads the values, but uses the visual to track from. So aside from that, it's like you always try to pick the right system for the job, right? Because some stuff work better with some systems, and if you're shooting in this condition or that condition, you want to pick the right stuff, and we really did for this job. It worked out really well in that sense. So yeah, it was awesome. So should we? Do you want me to just have a little go-see at the thing?
Absolutely,
and then,
dive into the tool.
Yeah, I'll show you a little bit if you get on my desktop. Hopefully I can maneuver a little bit. It's my resolution here is a little bit tricky here. So I'll fire up this tool. So this is Director is basically our front end tool, which lets us kind of control when we're doing the on-site and the live. But we are able to use this tool at any moment, right? It runs alongside our engine. Basically, what this thing is doing right now is we run a data hub underneath that kind of collects all the data and does all the communication, and we can connect as many cameras as we need, or basically usually we have one machine running per camera, and we can control all that from one control interface, which is really nice, and just send all the data over there. And then unfortunately I don't have tracking here, but I'll show that a little bit later, but in this office. But you can add your tracking servers. We have tracking servers that will take all this communication part of that. You configure your cameras and do these things, so you can add any kind of camera. We're connected up to a camera database, and it'll basically give you your correct film backs and everything like that. Color space and tracking is different systems that we have available. And then basically, I mean, we get communication ports that we talk to the tracking systems across. Video I/O setup. I don't have a camera here, but I'll give you a little brief on that a little bit later as well. Routing your signals in and out, and then you can do tracking offsets and things if you need to. Usually we have pretty good data coming in, so we don't necessarily really need to do much offsets and things like that on the trackings. Delays is always an important thing. Usually the machines render quicker than the tracking, so it's we can delay them back and forth to kind of make sure that they stick. So for that's pretty much the setup in here. I mean, obviously it's more than just jumping through the menus, but it's a fairly nice to have all this stuff in one place. And at the bottom, we always have kind of an overview of what your network is doing and what your camera tracking server is doing, and the data hub, where it's running. So and then when you go over to the launch pad, this is where you would add in your projects. It could be Unreal projects, it could be projects that have been created in Pixeltope. We fairly traditional, just add your projects, and you go in and add your basically in here, you can add any kind of project folder, or I'm not going to add projects now, but you can just go in and add your Unreal project. And then it'll come up in your launch menu. And we set it up so that we have a current level running so that the director kind of knows where it should store all the data that you're doing inside of the director, what project it's related to. So for this one, I can basically set this as my current project and find the maps. I mean, usually we have a lot of maps, and then you can just go ahead and, say store this, and then start it up here. Only get your start levels, and then I can just go ahead and launch the editor. So, I mean, what you'll see is that this is, of course, a little bit of a skin on this, but underneath the hood, it's all Unreal. And we are fully integrated with the engine. So, anything that you can do in the engine, you can also do in Pixitope, which is really nice. And that's why we, created this. We have people that are extremely good at using Unreal, both from the game world and also, running all this different. Let me just get this thing going. Let's see. I think I may actually open the wrong level. Sorry. Let's see. It's typical when you're running. Let me just see that I get that correct, because I might have done the wrong level. Let's see.
I think you picked the.
Oh, I did. Studio. Okay, there you go. Sorry. Yeah, so then you can just relaunch it, and it'll kill the other processes and kind of go off on its own. I should have cleaned this folder up a little bit before we got going.
Set every developer ever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But, usually it's good to keep levels around though, because we do use sublevels for stuff, and making sure that actually I think it's already it's launching here. So does this seem to update okay, like the actual frame rates?
Yeah, we're seeing the mouse. And
hopefully I can. Let's see if I can navigate. So here you can see, I just have since I don't have any video input output here, I can't really do much with the. I'm not getting any video feed in. So what I can do here in the engine is that we can just set a debug mode, and it'll actually just put an image of your choice back there. And then this little thing down here is a kind of what we call a WYSIWYG mode. Is if you have video output, you can have your tracked camera inside the scene output data directly to the output and to a monitor, a broadcast monitor or something like that, or directly to a feed. So you could always send while you're in the editor working, because we always we have there's always a tracked camera in here. I'll show this a little bit better once I have basically a tracked camera. You can see, because if we have tracking data come in here, you can see up in the top here, the data hub is connected, but the camera tracker is disconnected. So once you have tracking connected here, you can actually see all your tracking data, and you can see this camera move around with the tracking data as you're in the editor, and you can easily see where your camera is located in the scene, right? So once you're in the editor, we have a couple of different modes up here on the left, which adheres to different productions that we do. But this is more this is for the AR when we're doing all the compositing internally, and this is the internal when you're just doing live backgrounds with talents in front of them, and this is when you're actually compositing externally, when you're importing image data in and out. So some of these modes will be more combined in the future, but it's really nice to just have them like this right now. It's very easy to control. So currently, this is Pixitope interface. I mean, it looks a little bit different, but it has every feature that Unreal does. And right now I can pretty much just bring up, say, my sequencer here. Let's see if I find this thing I have. Let's bring up this stadium here. Let's see. Here we go. So all this is pretty much, it's just all these things that we did put together into a sequence, and it sits and listens for timecode. And I can go out of game mode here. And what we did also was that for the field itself, we actually went, I always think it's really important to just try and put a lot of detail in there when you are creating these things, because it's not fun to be there and you don't have enough resolution to kind of, make sure that you can go close on this stuff. So this field itself is actually, has about 22K textures. And it's all combined with a parallax occlusion mapping, so that we can get really nice kind of the feel of when you're close on the ground, you're actually getting the feel of something like an AstroTurf or something like that, right? And that's why you need to be able to have these resolutions because you're going to be far out and you're going to be pretty close. And like I said before, you never really know where the camera is going, right? Because it's live and someone can look at something that you might not want them to look at. But so that's something that we do. So here you can see, if I just run this live right now, I can pretty much just look around the scene, and I just have a bit of pre-roll here, and that's why you can see some stuff in the scene. But once this thing kicks off, and this sequence gets triggered by timecode, all this stuff happens, and you can see all this animations happen, and you can pretty much move freely. And that's what we make sure that we can move freely anywhere through through fog, and making sure that all these things are running full frame, that you're not going to hitch anywhere. You're probably hitching with my desktop transfer, or is it okay?
Yeah, it looks pretty good actually.
All right, cool. So so that's another thing that we've done with Pixotope, is that we have this panel over here, where you can. This basically just, it might look weird. It says fixed settings, but what it does is that it actually, when you get other windows in front of Unreal, it doesn't take down the performance. It actually keeps the performance running in the background, so it doesn't slow it down, so that it's interactive. So here you can, we have settings where we use all the time. We can gauge any kind of what's going on in the scene. We have ready access to all these performance tools directly from the interface. We don't have to kind of sit there and run through all the command lines and things like that. It's just it's helpful for us when we're trying to gauge what's going on site, and have a quick way of getting to it. And the good thing about this is that with my director interface, I'm gonna try and place it. It might be a little bit hard. So let me just see. If I'm trying to get my resolution here. So let me know if it's weird for. Can you guys still see that?
Yeah.
Let me just get my window back here. Just don't. So in this interface, actually, I think it's pretty much. Sorry about the resolution. I'm having a little bit of a hard time here. So okay, so in the production tab, you actually have different ways of interacting with the scene. So I'll go back here and turn that off. But here you have obviously panels that you can control stuff in the scene if you want to. You can access any stuff like that in let's see. In Pixotope, we actually do a thing where we actually treat stuff separately. Like we're very careful about wrecking video. So our video signals is something that we take very seriously, that we don't want to make sure that the engine doesn't, if you're importing video in and people and things like that, you don't want to mess with something that the production might, feel dear. So we treat the video separately from everything. So if you see in here, you could either link your video signal and your graphics, or just run it separately. But in here, it's pretty familiar to Unreal users. We just interface with the post-processing volumes in the engine, and this is super important when you're doing production, that you're able to kind of, especially with with augmented like this, you can tweak your grading to match your plate a little bit better. So you can always go in and hone the look of this stuff to. Also when you're in the editor, right? So you go in and you can tweak your white balance. You can go in and you can enable grading on all your shadows and midtones and highlights, and making sure that saturation controls, individual color controls, and just reset them back here, and then you can do contrast, the regular standard stuff for gaining your image up and down.
Yeah, but it's not standard for a video production team to go find the post-process volume and then scroll down in the settings, right? So this is a more familiar interface.
Exactly. So this is where it becomes kind of nice to be able to do to do ready access stuff. So if if I were to go in here and say let's drop in a let me just let's say we get a spotlight. So I'll just do that here. let's drop a spotlight in the scene. Sorry, I'm just gonna stop this. I forgot to stop this thing. So let's do this properly. Get a spotlight in the scene. I'll get out my game mode. I don't need to see my background right now, so I'm just gonna switch it back to internal, just so I don't need the AR, the mats component out of it. And then, you know, if I have my spotlight in the scene, and in the scene I'm running some volumetric fog. Sorry. Oops. Here we go. So in the volumetrics, I'll just, you know, crank this up to something crazy so you can actually start seeing it. So I have a volumetric component in here, right? And what I could do, let's say, just rename this object to something like fog spot or something. And the nice thing about this is that we can pretty much have people, you know, access any part of their scenes. So what we can do here is, you know, from the interface, you see these little stars we have down the side here. We can actually expose whatever we want. You know, these are always there by default in Director, but we can expose these other things that we want to control. So once that stuff is exposed, we can actually go in, and this obviously now I'm running it through the editor, but you also have access to this when you're running it live. So you can go in here and, you know, you can look for the fog spot right here as an object. I'll just say, okay, I'm going to adjust this, and you can already see that I have my little things that I start in the editor. They're available to me. So now I can, you know, go in here. I want to see if I can do this both at the same time, and I can go and play, you know, play God here with this directly from the director to always have the ability to control anything in the editor from here. Actually, I want to see if I can get to this optimization panel, so it's actually running. Same thing with the light color, you know, that I exposed. Will let you change the color of your lights directly from the director interface, which is super nice when you're running production and you know, someone's like, oh, we need these fog lights to be looking different. And obviously you always have the possibility of, you know, turning on and off visibility of the objects that you pick, and you know, also translation of these objects you can do directly from this interface. So, you know, this is all fine because now you're thinking, oh, well, I can do that here. I have access to the editor, but yeah, but when you're in live mode, it becomes a whole different thing, right? So what I can do here is, let me see really quickly. I'll just go back here, and then we'll say, okay, we'll save the scene with the settings. See, save current here. Yeah, that's fine. Whatever. And then what I can do here, that's fine. From this, now I can just jump back to my launch tab, and I can say, find this crazy level in here somewhere. Sorry about that, I didn't start that earlier. So this one, let me start now so I don't do that again. Yeah. So here, and then we can just go launch live, and then you know, if you have more machines connected to the interface, you know, to this director, you basically just check the machines that you want to run this on, and in production, you know, every machine is a camera. I mean, you could also have other virtual things going on, but so then you can execute all the stuff from one director interface and control every machine, and you can send any signal. This is going to be a little bit weird because I don't have any tracking in here, so this is going to be a little bit of a weird angle. I can usually just jump out of my tracked camera, just hitting the F9 key. I can kind of run around and do my thing and actually have the camera properties already in there. But if I want to, I can just hit F9 back again, and it'll snap into the tracked camera, which is usually nice when you're trying to find your way around the scene, and you don't want to be locked to the tracked camera on location. I need to see what's happening over here. And then from the director interface, basically, you know, you have your object panel again, and you can jump in and you can start messing with this again. I think I have a crazy value on my light. So there you go. So now I have the same controls when I'm running in live mode, and obviously you have a lot better performance because your editor window doesn't take up any performance.
Right.
So that's the sweet part about it. You can be super quick. You can jump into the editor, flop it open, do all these things, and then save off your settings, and then come back jump into live mode, and you're ready to go and have the same controls in your director interface. And that's just a small part of it. I can show you a little bit of a different thing. I'll see if I can just I'll just kill this right now and just open up a different. It's not getting boring yet, right?
Nope, not at all.
Okay, good.
We were seeing a little bit of, for some reason, I think it's mostly the way we do screen share, but the frame rate that you're displaying is not really what we're seeing on this end. So something happened between the live version and the editor one. And so
Okay.
when you move the camera, just do it a little slower, and then it looks pretty good for us.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, just let me know. I'll definitely do that. For me, everything. I mean, this is running currently at 130. I'm not gen locked, so normally, when we're on location, we gen lock our render machines so that if we have a set frame rate, it needs to be gen locked to the camera so that we're not rendering fast or anything, and they're ticking at the same milliseconds frames. So let me see. Let me just get out of this thing, and then we'll go to this demo project. Set that as a current. Then you'll have to close all this. I'll open up. This was a level that we did for NAB this year. It was more of a demo thing for to show off some of the stuff that we could do. Let me see. Fire up the editor here. And it's just kind of shows off that pushing these new graphics cards and things to do a lot more than we used to be able to, right? It's fascinating to see what you can do, and even with running all dynamic scenes as well. I mean, I know baking things off can be a little bit cumbersome when you're doing, if you don't have a very specific this is what we're going to do with this set or something like that, but you want to keep your lighting dynamic. But with the cards we're running now, with these new and powerful cards, we can do a lot of things. So this is a scene that we whipped up just using photogrammetry around our office. Our office like right down here, so nice little river running up here. And the thing is, what I can do in this scene is that we can do a lot of triggering stuff, right? So you want to be able to control anything that you can think about or what the creative needs. So if you have some sort of what should I say, like twisted logic that you want to come up with, and you want to be able to execute that at runtime, that's something that we can set up fairly easily here. So most of the viewers are probably pretty familiar with setting up blueprints, but in here you can see we have I'll just look up one of my actors here. So this is a rain controller object, right? So in there's a bit of logic in this that just makes it rain, basically. So we have a couple of custom events in here that calls the rain and stops the rain, and then it runs through. There's some NPCs in here controlling things and particle systems. But the funny thing is that anything could be hooked up to anything in Unreal. But what we can do here through our director interface, if I bring it back up again, I can go into this and say, let's create a control panel, because this is something that's pretty important when you're on site, to be able to click these things and execute these things really quickly. So in here I can say, okay, let's just call this let's call it epic, because it's really epic. And then in here I have my toolbox. I can just drop in a couple of trigger objects. And this might look a little bit strange, but this is something that when you're in production, you just you need to have this stuff really available, and being able to just lay out crazy big things and move them around and set up a very visible control panel is important. So in here I can go in and say, let's call this rain, and set it up as a pretty gloomy that color here. And then you can basically search through your objects in your scene and sorry, rain. And then this is the rain controller, and in there I have my functions basically available to me. So I click this one and apply this. So now that thing's set up, right? And then in here I can go back and go here, and then we'll say, please, all right, stop rain. There we go. Make it nice and sunny, or as I say, not Norway. Add the not Rena, Rain. Sorry, can't type that. It's a bit slower than it used to be. There we go. And then find another function that we looked at. So then you apply that, and then this is basically your panel, and you can configure it any way you want it. So now that we have this control panel, I can go back in my scene and I can basically set this up to preview. Are you guys hearing that sound? You're not, right? Okay. There was some sound in there in that scene.
Yeah, no, I should have muted it.
Okay, good. I could hear it in my headphones. So now we're on location and we have this, and then we go ahead and we click this button, and director talks to that object and executes this function. And it's pretty nice because you can actually run entire shows on this. You could basically say that we've done shows before where we have one button that just jumps from one chapter to the next. And you can just have a big box on it that says next. You have a presenter.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings me to the next point, which is the nice thing about this is that we can always just say, hey, let's open this in a browser. I'll bring this over here. And you can see this is now my just check that I have my oh, it didn't connect to my thing here real quick. Let's do that again. There we go. Okay. So so now you can see that I'm connected to on the local network, and this is just a local URL. So you can we've tested it with anything from an iPad to any kind of machine on your network. We've even tested with an Apple Watch. I mean, it didn't work on mine because it's a Series 2. So Series 3 and up will actually, you can execute these things from your watch, which is kind of nice when you're either your presenter or something like that, and have a direct connection to that. So here, I can just click this button in my web browser, and it does the same thing. Lets you control this from.
It's really
anywhere.
neat. So you can actually, if someone has a device, you can just immediately tell them to go to this local IP, and they can operate.
Exactly.
Yeah. So really easy if you have, say, all your devices broke, someone just whips out their iPad and says, no problem.
Exactly. So when this data hub is running, you're connecting to it through here, and you get the local URL on any device. You can have someone else in the studio or something being the operator of all this, even the presenter, which is usually nice because then they can kind of run with it themselves. So that's that for the local stuff. And like I said, we can interface with pretty much anything. So in here as well, I don't think I actually have that in here. See if you can find this. I'm just going to rename that to makes it a little easier. Same thing here. This is our sunlight. I'm going to stop the scene right now. So and same thing in here. You can access. That was the last scene. Here we go. So if I go here, actually, I'm gonna kill that. Reread it. Reread my scene. Sometimes when you're dropping in objects from the editor while you're actually you gotta just basically refresh the data from the data hub. So see if it actually did not do that right now, which is weird. Is that probably because I changed? Oh, it didn't change the name of it. That's why I'm not finding it. So let's see, moving that in. It was me being sloppy, not actually getting the name to stick. So now we have actually should select that. So let's go ahead and adjust that. And this same thing again. You can just jump in and say like my visibility, and then turning my. Sorry, I'm gonna try to place this. Turning my sunlight on and off. We can do the same things here. We can add little buttons for what you need, and then kind of reread in those attributes. Set your intensities. Change your colors on the fly. Make it a nice bloody evening. And yeah, again, have access to all your transforms. Rotate these things around. Yeah. So that kind of gives a bit of an overview of how we can set things up pretty quickly and work in the editor directly with camera tracking data, with outputs to anywhere from the engine. And when we're ready to go, we have all our systems and our control panels and everything set up. You just launch the live mode and you set off the other machines directly from this interface. And all your cameras are looking at the same scene. Technically, it's all synced up, right? And all the machines are running the same levels. We have a system of just making sure that we all sync the data between the machines when we're on site. So every time we change something, it automatically kind of syncs the machines and updates them, and then we'll fire it off, ready to go. So it's
it's
pretty
very
good.
cool. It's almost a little game in itself, just playing around with the director.
Yeah, no, it is, right. And since you always have access to all these things, especially in here where you can set up and actually I'm not going to link those, but here when you have your scene set up and you're just going to move. Since I don't have a composite here right now, I can't do the video, but it's just nice to be able to just kind of dial in your scene a little bit. Let me just enable that, and just kind of like be able to control these things and dial in what you would like right on the fly. Sorry about the sunlight, kind of wrecks everything I had to try to do.
Right.
But yeah, you get my point.
Yeah, so a scene
yeah.
like this that is basically a complete virtual world. We're not using the real world as a background. What would a real live action camera do here? Sort of how would that look?
Oh, so I mean, it's a little bit hard for me to show right here. I actually let me close this thing down and I can show you really quickly through a video.
Yeah.
That I have here from when I actually had tracking. Let's see if I can find my. There we go. So if you see here, minimize this director as well. So what I can show you here, I had some flickering this today with running this full screen, but you can see here that when you're in the scene, it's the same scene. Let me get to that point where I can actually show you. So here you can see that here's my camera selected, and I have tracking data coming in. Yeah, you can see that we are running the tracking directly in the editor, and you can actually take the route and move it around, and your tracking will always show the correct thing, but you can offset your camera anywhere you want in your virtual space. So you could have an operator just standing on the floor, and you can say, "Oh, let's make a cool angle from this part of and just shoot it virtually, basically, right?"
Yeah.
Or if you have a presenter there, you can quickly go ahead and take that talent. Actually, this is a pretty long video, but we actually have it's an internal keyer that we have in here as well. Let me just jump here, so you can see that what you do is you would key a person out, and then you could move that talent anywhere. This is, I'm sorry about this thing. It's what I deem our troll lab. It's but it's it's just a quick place for us to test ideas and things like that really quickly. And then you can see here that when you have this in the scene, you can throw shadows from these planes and stuff, and then you can, if you don't have studio shadows or keyable shadows in your studio, then you can go in here and you can this is actually a debug view that will let you see if you can't really find your planes or something in your scene. You can actually turn on this. And in here you can go ahead, and what I tried to show before is you can individually grade either your graphics to your foreground or vice versa. So you can kind of, if you need to just balance your graphics a little bit, if the show director or something says, well, I like the way the person looks, but then your black levels or something are completely out, you can go ahead and kind of fix that with quick access to these tools, which is super nice, right? Because we're fully using the nice floating point data that we're getting out of Unreal. It's and all the tools that are becoming available in the engine is really nice. That we've kind of gone that way. That people that are coming from the visual effects worlds, we need to have these tools available to us and understand. We understand everything about linear gamma, rendering and how this works. And now that the engine has all this stuff and physical lights and these things are coming into play, we can really get to where we need to be. So this is another section here that I really was quickly showing off with the tracking in the studios, that we have obviously this is an AR character, and you can do the same things, right? We can have shadows that we can set up for him we can have shadows, reflections, and all these attributes. We can also control the opacities and the tinting of the shadows, which is usually a big thing when you're trying to shoot them next to live people. And I'll show you here in a second, is also that we have direct control over the screen percentage rendering, so you can get higher resolution super sampling, so you can actually get more detail. When you're running AR, that's usually a good thing, because you don't need to render the full image. You're just rendering this one character or something on screen, and you can allow yourself to go a little deeper on the resolutions. So then again, you're just kind of triggering off your character, and you set this up just normal blueprint things that call out certain actions, and make them juggle or whatever, and anything that you want to trigger. And that's that's what we normally do when we go to a place, is that we go in and we shoot our lighting probes, and we make sure that we have all the environments correctly set up, so that we can, when we get our AR in there, it matches the scene, and then you're trying to get all these attributes to match the scene, right? So that makes me pretty giddy now that we can start doing AR with ray tracing and setting up proper lighting and getting your nice soft area shadows, and that's going to be it's kind of a godsend for that kind of stuff integrating into real imagery. So yeah,
and it's intended to simulate the real world, right? So everyone who comes from a real world set should have an easier time sort of moving over to the virtual set, because it's intended to simulate a real world scenario.
Yeah, and I think it's everybody's talked about convergence for a very, very long time, with the visual effects world and the game world melding together. But I think we're really getting somewhere, and it's great for me here that I have people that have spent 20 years in games, and they're very good at the logic of setting up systems and all these things. And then we come from the visual effects side. I mean, I was working as a VFX supervisor here in Europe for many years, and doing lots of quick, fast-paced productions from commercials, and also into large movie productions, and dealing with large sets. And now that we can kind of use the same systems to create this integration is what kind of drives me to play around with this. I think it's exciting times for that. But I think the people coming out of visual effects also see the fact that we can now start playing with these tools and getting justification that it's real time, and not have to wait for 5,000 years for render.
There's no there's no bumper chairs while you're waiting for your all your stuff to render out.
Yeah,
that's great. Are you?
And that was my first. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna ask if you're ready for some questions, but please continue.
Sure. Oh yeah, no, I just wanted to mention, because when we did this TV show, everything in the studio was live, but we actually did post produce all the graphics through the engine. And when we had the system set up and we were rendering, basically had a script that was collecting the data and sending it off to a render farm, and I could only have 4 render machines, because that would kill all the I/O. I mean, we had super fast connections to these machines, but with these files that we were rendering out, because I elected to go for uncompressed DXR at 4K and with raw linear data in them, and still we were getting 1,000 frames per second, at 4K, which is pretty amazing when you're trying to produce something and you need to render, and then you want to adjust some stuff and then re-render. It's pretty cool. We can do that. So it's exciting, but real time is sweet when you need to hit those 60 frames.
Yeah. They're a little curious about where they can first off find Pixotope, and then they're also curious a little bit about the licensing around it.
Yeah. So currently the way, you would just pixotope.com is a good place to start. But Pixotope in itself is I don't know too much about the sales part, but it's a monthly rental agreement. But normally what happens is that it's a matrix of how the longer you purchase and the more license you need, it gets cheaper. But it's a $2,500 a month per camera.
Let's see. And they were also asking, it doesn't seem like it's on the marketplace, and they're asking if it's launched as a standalone. And this is basically a custom version of Unreal, right? Its
Yes.
own thing. It's not just a plugin. It's a modified source build of Unreal that you built on top of, and then you've also built the director separately as well.
Correct. So that's the thing with it is its own version of Unreal. It's all built in and kind of created by us. But it's the same source that's available. But yes, it's sold separately as its own software. Yes.
Are you making texture extraction from the live feed?
Well, I mean, we can. If you're talking about taking the plate and actually, is that what you mean? I think I need to.
I'm not sure. That was the question. If you were making texture extraction from the live feed, I was hoping you would know more than I do.
Texture extraction from the live feed. I mean, we could use the live feed as a texture. So we could use it as any type of media input into Pixotope. It's basically, I'll see if I can get to that right here. Which I might have to play this video again because I don't have the input here. This is another video that kind of goes through just the setup of it. But in here, when we're actually defining where our inputs are, let's see if I can grab this as it gets there. Yeah, let me see. So in here, when you're specifying, you can see up here on the right.
I don't think we're
it
seeing
says,
anything.
Sorry.
There we go.
My bad. Yeah. So in here, up on the right here, you can actually, your video input types, is where you can specify, do you want to have this as an input media? Do you want to make sure that, if it's just an input media that you use for a texture, you can feed different inputs into your video card. And I'm speaking not as a graphics card, but an input video card like a Kona Aja card or something like that. It will set your type so you can kind of interface with it in different ways, using it textures or using it as backgrounds or using it as a foreground image. So that's how you'd want to configure that in the engine.
Okay. They were curious if you were using NCAM camera sensors for lighting the scene.
No, we haven't been using those. Not in. This was all. Basically, this was just done with a nice big reflection capture, of the stadium itself, and then we placed lights in the scene to kind of get where we wanted. Because a lot of times too, you want to put a little bit of creative juice in there as well. You don't necessarily want it to just look exactly that it's just placed, but a little bit of making sure that you get your glints and your highlights in the correct places and stuff that kind of looks nice and the creatives agree with. So yeah, I think not for this one, but yeah, it's definitely possible.
Does Pixotope play with AJA, AGA / Blackmagic video cards?
Currently, we support the Aja cards, but we will be supporting more of the other cards going forward. Yes.
Nice. Have you developed a tool for lens calibration for Pixotope?
Yes, we do have a calibration tool for lenses. It's not being sold, but we do have one that's in the works here. But currently we've been dealing with a lot of the vendors. The tracking vendors are doing the calibrations for us, but we do have a tool that will. I can't say for sure that it's going to be released or if it's just going to be an internal tool, but we do have one. Yes.
Nice. How do you handle real camera XYZ to virtual camera scaling and offsets? Could you show an example?
Right. So basically, what we can do in the, let's see if I can get it here. Let me just launch something real quick. Let's see. Launch. Let's do this. I really didn't want to do this. Well, I can do it. That should be a cache. It's fine. Yes. So our camera root object basically controls all that. So you can go ahead and you can scale up or scale down or move and rotate and do what you want with your camera while you're running. So it's a bit hard for me to really show what's going on because the render camera isn't. I'll see if I can actually get that working without having any tracking input, but it should be. Oh, I'm moving too fast right now. So all right. Well, so this root object that we have in the scene, not rot. I'm yelling. Sorry. Here we go. Camera root. So this is where we would control, and we can actually go ahead and I'm not sure if you're going to see that here because, but actually it actually, yeah, no, it won't show you this right here, but we can do offsets on this route, and you can it will let you scale up or scale down when you're actually going. So we've done that where we've done kind of bigger transitions down to like microscopic places. We can do all that with the tracked camera. We actually did that during our NAB or NAB session we had, kind of like going down to macro scale. So. But yeah, it's very hard for me to show without getting any kind of input. So sorry about that.
No, that's all right. I don't think anyone was expecting you to have an entire virtual set up and a bunch of operators and here's the director and Mr. Producer over there. I think everyone's happy just to be able to see a little bit of a custom version of Unreal, because for most people it's probably not as common as just downloading the regular source version, right? Or the binary one. What kind of video I/O board are you using for the camera?
Aja cards.
Aja cards, nice. See, I am unfamiliar with sort of the video tech, so if I'm repeating some questions that you might already have answered, that's just because
I'm
I'm not up to speed with anything that goes.
Yeah. So we do support. I mean, right now it's the Kona 405s, the Corvid 88s, and those series. So yeah, for those people out there that are familiar with it.
They're asking, how long does it take to bring a scene online? You mentioned capturing light probes. What types of gear do you use to make those, and what types of resolutions?
So I mean, it all depends what the job is, right? Like if you're really trying to get super high crisp reflections, and then you want to set up a proper DSLR with a fisheye and shoot it and do it the proper way. What we found is that now with the new Thetas, you can get pretty far, and you can especially now that the Thetas have a new model out where you can do raw captures. You can pretty much just have it on a tripod, throw it out there, and with your phone you can set up your bracketing sequences and just have it ready to go and hammer it together in Photoshop or whatever you want to use to combine those exposures. So we found that to be really nice just on location when you don't need the super high crispy reflections and things like that. So
that's neat. They were curious what the round trip latency of the system is from capture to final pixels.
Well, that can vary, right? It all depends a little bit on the chain and how everything. But we usually see something between, I don't know, 2 to 10 frames of delay. It all depends, like with all the parts coming together. So 2 to 10 frames is usually acceptable.
And that's where you use the director interface to sort of set that, whatever that delay is.
Yes, the delays, yeah. Exactly. So, obviously, like we're working, usually it all depends. There's sound in there as well, right? So if you're dealing with sound, you're working with the sound people to try and see if they want to delay their sound. And there's a lot of things that you got to think about when you're doing this. But having the tools available, and that's what we found for us. Really the important thing when you're on location is just being super available to be able to jump in and out of the editor really quickly, do your things that you need. If you need to change something or move some objects or adjust objects or put like when you're talking about bigger ones, obviously individual ones you can do from the director, but being able to fire that up and then do your changes and close it down, fire it live, and you're ready, you're on the air again. Or even just output directly from your editor directly to the output chain. You can also do and work directly from the editor, but not with the full performance, obviously. So but it's really nice when you're doing rehearsals and stuff. You can just kind of sit there and see the camera feed. And what we a lot of times do as well, if we're involved in rehearsals, when you're doing things like this, it's not always very easy to get your camera to be able to see what you need to see to do your work right up front. So what we normally do is that we do run the rehearsals, and then we have our own recorder connected to our system, so we will record off those signals, and then we can play them back and do our work against those rehearsal images, just to make sure, because a lot of these bigger productions are usually set on time code, right? So the lighting people, all these, everything's running on the time code, so you can usually replicate using your rehearsals for if you're setting up lighting or something like that, you can use that data. So yeah.
Do you need to compile or bake to switch from editor mode to live mode?
No.
I didn't think so. It's essentially running just a debug game version of the editor. Yeah.
Yes. That's what we've chosen to do. I mean, it just shows on the turnaround. It just that's what makes it. We need to be able to execute fast. I mean, maybe possibly lose a few frames here and there, but it's. I'd rather optimize a little bit more and find the right things to do in the scene than to not have that readiness, I would say.
Right. Yeah. It's essentially the same as right-clicking the .u project file and hitting launch game. It's the same thing that the live mode does. Really cool. Could this work with anamorphic lenses?
Yeah, I mean, it's very rare that we've come across that in the broadcast space. I'm not sure. We haven't tried it with anamorphic lenses, but possibly. We can definitely give it a go.
Yeah. Do you support?
But the thing is, I mean, like obviously, yeah, the setups. I mean, the setup is your film backs and everything we are, but the squeeze. I mean. Yeah, we'd probably have to test it. It'd be good to try that.
Do you support DX12 and ray tracing?
So right now we have a version running DX12 that we use at NAB with our doing AR. We just want to make sure that with the big DX12 lift, that our pipeline running all the video I/O and all this stuff is the actual engine is done. It's just we just want to make sure that our video pipeline and everything is made to work perfectly. So we could run the engine currently right now. I mean, it's ready to go in DX11, but the final touches are being put on the video pipeline. So it'll be very soon.
It's exciting. That was all of the questions. Actually, is there anything else you would like to leave our viewers with before we wrap this up?
Sure. I mean, I think it's Pixotope in itself is to me, it's a good tool when you're out and doing these shoots, and even if you're a small production, right? It's great to be able to have these tools to layer graphics into your scenes. And right now, this kind of came out of a necessity and how we wanted to work. People might like to work a different way, need to have more control. But I feel like with the level of control and kind of the front end simplicity that gives you that control through the logic underneath, I think is a good way for us to, and I think people respond to it in a good way. And the thing with Pixotope as well is that the Future Group is a very it's a company that's built on creativity, and we are a 50-50 creative and company with technology, developers. So it's a 50-50, right, split. So we have the people that understand production and understand creative, basically the creative needs and that's how the platform has spawned. So I'm excited to see where it'll take us, because I think we have a lot of plans for it. We have a nice little internal Trello board like you guys do, that you guys have it public. But there's a lot of cool stuff in there, and I think because we also have an open API in the system that we've run. There's this open source thing called Node-RED. It will let you parse any kind of data coming. You can set up a local server. You can connect to Twitter, to weather systems, whatever you need. I mean, Node-RED is very open. We can parse JSON files. We can parse anything that we want into the engine and use it for anything. So if you want to have a stock ticker that, grows your trees or fills them with money every time the stock market goes up, then we can do that. So that's what I think, people, even developers, will really kind of like that part about it, because you can't really tell from the directory interface, but all that power is lying underneath, and we can do crazy cool things with it.
Yeah, and it's definitely battle tested, right? It's
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's been out there. It's not, even though it might be, it's not really experimental. It's because you're using it for live production, and I don't know of any other sort of good test to validate whether a tool is stable and sort of does what you want it to than actually doing it live.
No, I mean it is. I mean it's a tool that is built on an engine that it's evolving all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be, you have to make those decisions. But for us, the number one thing is that we always, it's stable when we're running it live. Like if the editor crashes or something, that will always happen with software. Something, you will always talk to some, person that has a driver installed on their graphics card or video board, or someone plugs in something that'll, mess with your ports, or there's always going to be stuff like that in production. It's unavoidable. But the actual way, when you're running live shows, this needs to be rock solid when you're running live, and we've had really good experience with that stuff. It's rare that we've had any crashes, and we let these systems run for days without any kind of hitching or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, it's battle tested in that way, but you can never guarantee that your editor or something like that, when you're accessing something that, it's software, right?
Software and a lot of people and a lot of hardware.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a lot of pieces.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on and showing us all this. I'm pretty excited myself. I would definitely like to play around with it. Although, for my own purposes, I think the price tag, I will have to think about that a little bit, just for having fun in my little home office. It's not really what it's meant for, right? If they want
No,
to,
but that's something that, like, we are talking about markets like that as well, to see if there's any way that we can approach other types of markets with other models. I mean, that's really not my job to decide or how we're going to move forward with that. But we definitely think it's fun to give people access to let them play and have the ability to put those images out. And this is so usable for many things, with the entertainment and all these things. It's really great. And the fact that you can, with an open platform like the Unreal Engine, it's just amazing what you can connect into it and out of it.
Yeah, it's great. Once again, thank you so much, Øystein, for coming on. Everyone, say goodbye to Øystein. Before we're not going just yet. As always, I want to let everyone know about the survey that we have. Tell us what you liked about the show today, what you might want to see next time, or any other feedback. Everyone who enters it with an email address has a chance to get a T-shirt through the sweepstakes that we run. And always make sure that you visit our user group site on unrealengine.com/user-groups, I believe it is. To see if there are any meetups near you where you might be able to come visit. Maybe I think there used to be a UE4 meetup in Oslo, actually, that I think we need a new organizer for, actually. So I'm just putting that out there in case you might know anyone who might be interested.
Let's see what we can do. I'm not. I know there's been something, but I unfortunately haven't had the abilities to. I have some other people that are dependent on me, but I love, I was as part of the Visual Effects Society for many years, and I really love those efforts. Norway's always been a little bit of the outskirts, so it's great efforts and bringing people like that together. So that's something that we should definitely get better at arranging, because we went to the Build event in Stockholm, and it was awesome. Really cool to see all these people getting together, and you guys are creating a community, which is awesome. So. And especially now that people are coming from everywhere using the engine, so
yeah,
super awesome.
Yeah, everyone's sort of congregating on real-time technology, which we're at the forefront of. So it makes sense that you want to come use Unreal. And our meetups usually, I've been, some of them are all about the next coming game jam, and people prepare lectures and talks, and I've seen quite a bit. I had a person once in Seattle. They actually and I've done similar stuff as well, just showing off how you can use, vibe trackers and VR systems to sort of, and then Sequencer, just stock engine, just sort of doing a little bit of like the Indies mocap. And if you're wondering what it might be, like what it would take to create a user group, just shoot us an email at community@unrealengine.com, and we'll talk you through it. If you noticed the countdown video that we had at the beginning, if you would like your game to be surfaced in that way as a countdown, go ahead and take 30 minutes of development footage in Editor, speed that up to 5 minutes, and then go ahead and send us that again to community@unrealengine.com with your logo, and you might come on and be part of our countdown. If you stream on Twitch, make sure that you use the Unreal Engine category so that we can drop by and everyone else who are interested in what you might be doing. And then, as always, follow us on social media. We're on Twitter and all the other ones that I'm not going to name because I think most of you should be aware of them by now. And then special thanks to all of you. Without you, we wouldn't be doing the stream. There wouldn't be an Unreal Engine community. There wouldn't be a community team. So we're really happy that you are all working with the engine and doing amazing things that lets us be entertained or inspired and motivated to create things of our own. And with that said, I think it's time to all say goodbye to Øystein, and I will see all of you next week when we will be demonstrating how to use Python in Unreal Engine. We got 2 of our devs from here that will be, actually one from the UK will be calling in, and then we'll have, I think, Aaron here from HQ who will be part of us. So thanks again so much, Øystein. It was a pleasure having you on the show. And
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll all tune in and see what all of you are at the Future Group are going to do in the future, because it's very exciting.
It's great.
It's
Thanks
awesome.
a lot, guys.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Bye, everyone.
Enjoy. Bye.